President of Venezuela is trying to get into the country. The president of Venezuela, President Nicolas Maduro, has been using his troops to try and stop those aid shipments. Vice President Mike Pence heads to Colombia Monday, where he is going to voice his support for the Venezuelan opposition leader. We have heard the president tweeting today about this. We have also seen the president's national security advisor specifically talk about these aid shipments that need to get in to Venezuela. Hour 2 of America's News headquarters. We're in Washington, following the developments there and around the world. I'm Leland Vittert.
And I am Jillian Turner. Good to be with you for Hour 2. President Trump just now tweeting about the standoff in Venezuela, writing, quote, "God bless the people of Venezuela." Brian Yanis joins us with the latest events unfolding now. Brian.
Good afternoon, Jillian and Leland. Let's put that live video back up if we can to show you what we're looking at. These are thousands of Venezuelans that have taken to the streets today. This is the Simon Bolivar International Bridge. This is one of the entry points from Colombia, Cucuta, Colombia, into Urania, Venezuela. And what you're seeing here are thousands of people who are told by the opposition to come out and help these humanitarian trucks make their way into Venezuela. Some 220 tons of humanitarian aid, food, water, medicines that these people desperately need have been sitting in Cucuta, Colombia for 2 weeks. And the hope here is that these masses of people will help get these trucks into Venezuela. The president of Venezuela, Nicolas Maduro, ordered his military to block these trucks from entering the country. He believes that this is a ploy by the Americans to end his regime. The opposition, led by Juan Guaido, called on Venezuelans today to rise up and on the Venezuelan military to disobey Maduro and allow this aid into Venezuela. Guaido also tweeted out this video earlier today. It reportedly shows 4 Venezuelan National Guardsmen on this exact bridge, the Simon Bolivar International Bridge between Colombia and Venezuela, defecting to the side of the opposition, leaving their posts. At one point, civilians even also removed obstacles, we're told, on the bridge in an attempt to clear the way for this humanitarian aid on these trucks. This morning, Guaido, the man the United States recognizes as Venezuela's interim president, is urging Venezuelan soldiers to join the opposition. He tweeted this earlier today, quote, "To the military, we reiterate our order. Obey the Constitution, let humanitarian aid through, and put yourselves on the side of people. Today you hold in your hands the lives of hundreds of thousands of Venezuelans. The whole country and the world will have their eyes on you. Decide well." We know at least one truck has made its way full of international aid to Venezuela from Brazil, the southern border of Brazil. It went through the city of Pacaraima in Venezuela. The question now is whether any of these other trucks from Colombia with U.S. aid will make their way into the country. The United Nations Secretary General has implored both sides not to resort to violence. And so far today, the Venezuelan border city of Urania, Maduro's military has used tear gas on protesters who lit a city bus on fire there. Yesterday, at least 2 were killed and a dozen civilians injured in clashes with the military on the Brazilian border. The bottom line here is Jillian and Leland, Guaido made a surprise appearance in Colombia last night for a benefit concert there where they were trying to raise some $100 million. He says the Venezuelan military helped him get to that concert. The big question now is which side will the Venezuelan military side with today, Guaido or Maduro?
And thanks, Brian. And also the other big question now is the first trucks have broken through. What about the metric tons of aid and the other trucks that are following closely behind? Will they get through? Brian, thanks so much.
Yeah, some interesting reporting from the Associated Press, who has someone on the ground there saying a Venezuelan army major has just rejected President Nicolas Maduro and supports the entry of aid. How much aid then gets into Venezuela and then what happens to it once it gets inside that country, yet to be seen. John Bolton, the national security advisor, tweeting this, though. As interim President Guaido said today, those who accompany us to save the lives of Venezuelans are true patriots, referring to the Venezuelan military. Jillian, you know better than most that these tweets and statements by the national security security advisor are extraordinarily well crafted. And you have to think that is a message to the Venezuelan military. Side with Guaido and America will leave you alone. Don't side with Guaido and side with Maduro. Perhaps you're on your own.
You know, other interesting reporting from Fox News sources that some senior Trump administration national security officials are actually on the ground on the Colombian border with Venezuela as some of this goes down in real time. To have senior eyes on the ground, it's a reflection of how deeply committed to this issue, deeply interested in this issue President Trump has been over the last few weeks.
He certainly has been. He gave that speech on President's Day in Miami to the Venezuelan dissidents, if you will, people who had come over and escaped. And he's now tweeting about this today. We also saw John Bolton in the very beginning of this talk about how the safety not only of U.S. diplomats but of Guaido himself was the responsibility of the Venezuelan military, and the U.S. would hold people responsible. So
Bolton had told me on Friday that the president raises Venezuela with him multiple times a day. They're having multiple discussions every day. That's highly unusual for a national security issue like this.
Well, it shows you how much they care about it. And then you extrapolate this out. We were talking earlier, we're going to try to get those live pictures of these clashes back as well. But it's not just Venezuela. There's a humanitarian crisis in Venezuela. It's tragic. People have lost 30 and 40 pounds because of a lack of food. There's a lack of medicine, and people are dying in the streets. That's happening all over the world. The geopolitical implications here in terms of Russia and Cuba, who both have big-time investments and big-time support for Maduro there, and being able to kick them out of Venezuela and out of the Western Hemisphere has serious implications as well.
And for President Trump, there is a clear domestic political message here, which is, as he faces off against the Democratic Socialists in 2020, this is a real-time, real-world example of socialism sort of destroying a country from the inside out. It's a message that he has decided to fully embrace.
Yeah, we've heard that from him both in his speeches and on the stump as well, talking about socialism and whether he compares it to Venezuela or some of the democratic socialists. He doesn't really make a distinction in that important point domestically, politically. In terms of what's happening on the ground in Venezuela, former U.S. diplomat who worked both at the White House and the State Department joins us to discuss exactly what Jillian was talking about, the Trump administration's response, and also what options are on the table as there is so much aid now waiting to get into people who need it so desperately.
Also at this hour, Acting Secretary of Defense Patrick Shanahan and Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff General Joe Dunford are in El Paso, Texas. They're surveying security measures recently put in place on the U.S. southern border. Jeff Paul has the latest on this. Jeff.
Yeah, they landed in El Paso about 2 hours ago and have a full day ahead of them in and around the U.S.-Mexico border. They're working to understand where the gaps are in border protection, what DHS specifically needs, and how much it could cost, meaning how much money will be spent of the $3.6 billion allocated from the military's construction fund. So far, they visited a National Guard mission on the border with Mexico. It's in Texas, but very close to New Mexico. And all of this is happening while the Trump administration and Democrats continue to square off regarding Trump's national emergency declaration at the border and Trump's push for a wall. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi just visited the border town of Laredo, Texas, saying there is no emergency and that the declaration violates the Constitution.
A wall is not effective. It's very expensive. It's nothing more than a campaign applause line for the president in one of his speeches. It has no merit in terms of effectiveness, cost effectiveness, and does not support the values of our country.
Now, the acting defense secretary and chairman of the Joint Chiefs will also view 2 other sites along the border. They'll board aircraft and from the air view the sites requested and prioritized for construction by DHS. Something we should point out, in a letter to the Department of Defense, DHS requested, quote, fencing, while the DOD uses the term barrier. None of the officials use the term wall. Jillian?
All of it as well, part of President Trump's plan to continue militarizing that southern border. Jeff, thanks for that.
Well, the president is at the White House today before he leaves for a second summit with North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un, obviously dealing with a lot in terms of the declaration of the national emergency, also making preparations for his trip and watching Venezuela as well. Ellison Barber on the North Lawn as the last-minute strategy sessions are underway. Hi, Ellison.
Hi, Leland. Yeah, a lot going on before President Trump makes his trip to Vietnam in the coming days. Senior administration officials say that they've spent the past month negotiating, engaging with their North Korean counterparts, and that will keep happening until the minute this second summit begins. Officials say the goal is to advance 4 pillars laid out at the Singapore summit in June of 2018, improving relations between the U.S. and North Korea, establishing a permanent peace regime on North Korea, complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula, and recovering and returning the remains of soldiers missing in action.
Is drawing down U.S. troops a consideration in your upcoming summit with North Korean Kim Jong-un?
No, it's not. No, that is not a consideration. That is not one of the things on the table.
What is on the table?
Oh, you really want me to discuss that now?
I do.
Everything is on the table.
Critics say the Singapore summit was all show and little substance, with no real mechanism to ensure denuclearization. The president maintains progress was made then and that more will be made next week.
If I were not elected president, you would have been in a war with North Korea. We now have a situation where the relationships are good, where there's been no nuclear testing, no missiles, no rockets. We got our hostages back. We have many of the remains back and coming back rapidly, the remains of our great warriors from many, many years ago, and the families are so thrilled and so happy. We've had a great relationship. The Singapore was a tremendous success.
All of this as the president continues to negotiate with China on trade. Chinese negotiators are in Washington. They were set to wrap up a week of trade negotiations when President Trump extended them through the weekend, saying that good things are happening, enough good things that Mr. Trump indicated he's open to extending the deadline for a trade deal. Without a deal by March 1st, tariffs on roughly $200 billion worth of Chinese products are set to go from 10% to 25%. President Trump expressed optimism, but at the same time, the U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer said there are still a very big hurdles to jump over in the coming days, and when it comes to actually finally reaching some sort of deal with China. Leland?
Yeah, the market was certainly happy about that news as it headed into Friday's close above 26,000 for the first time in a couple of months. Ellison Barber at the White House. Ellison, thank you. Jillian?
President Trump's now facing legal and legislative challenges to his national emergency declaration at the southern border, including from some members of his own party. For more on this, let's bring in Republican strategist Kimberly Klacik. Kim, great to have you here. Thanks for joining us.
Good afternoon.
So the president really went out on a limb. This was an unprecedented move, declaring a national emergency by circumventing the U.S. Congress. Now it looks like he's got these challenges stacking up against it. What's his mindset?
I don't know. I think there's been challenges from the very beginning, though, because think about it. Republicans had the House and the Senate, and we failed to get it done then. And we have to push the blame there, too. But right now, Democrats, they're running into 2020, and I think they're going to kick this can down the road. I don't think they want him to get anything accomplished. If he has another feather in his cap, they know that he's going to look even, his approval ratings, I should say, will look even better as he nears the election. So I think they're going to try their best to stop this.
Well, we know there's already at least 225 Democrats that are willing to sign on to this resolution stopping the national emergency, at least one Republican, and according to Fox's own sources this week, many more in the pike that are thinking about jumping ship and signing on to the Democrats' resolution. It's got to hurt.
Oh, it's definitely has to hurt. But and like I said, it hurt before. You know, when Paul Ryan, everyone, they could have done something. It hurt us before. But I think he should continue. I mean, this is a national emergency. To not secure our borders, as experts say, is detrimental to us. You know, there's a lot of children into human trafficking coming across. We have so much coming across as far as drugs, MS-13.
But border apprehensions, Kimberly, are up. An increasing number, a major percentage in the last year. What's the fear? If apprehensions are up, it means that law enforcement is doing what it's supposed to do. The job's getting done.
Yes, but I think this is also pushing back a lot on them and their resources. From what I gather, it seems like they're really understaffed in a way, because honestly, I think if they had a barrier, and they even said, Border Patrol even said a barrier would help them in these situations. I think we should keep going forward. They're there, they're on site, we are not. I think we should listen to the experts and those actually at the border.
What about the folks that say President Trump has gone so far out on a limb here that he's actually run afoul of the law?
Well, I think, honestly, we should probably talk to some lawyers about that. You know, I'm not an expert there, but I think, honestly, we elected President Trump. We elected him to make good on his campaign promises. And I think he's going to get it done at any means necessary. And I like that about President Trump.
Well, he's clearly going to do it by any means necessary because he's gone around the Congress. Take a look at the latest Fox News poll. We've got 38% of Americans polled favor the president bypassing the Congress in order to declare this a national emergency, but 56%, a solid majority here, a major lead, almost 20 points, oppose it. So the American people are opposed to the manner in which he's gone about pursuing his campaign commitment to them.
Yeah,
that tells you a lot about where the American people are, and they don't like this.
Yeah, and I understand that, because then you have to look at the future, right? If he does this now, what will someone do 8 years from now? And I get that point of it, and everyone should be cautious. But
it's a dangerous precedent.
It is. It definitely is. And I think people should be cautious in this situation. But at the same time, I'm looking at national security. I'm looking at what's in the best interest of Americans, and I understand that the majority may not feel the same way I do, but you know what's so great about this country? It's a democracy.
Well, thanks for sharing your perspective with us today, Kimberly.
Thank you.
Well, the R&B singer known as and a Fox News alert as the R&B singer known as R. Kelly right now is in police custody. He's in Chicago. Court hearing scheduled in the next couple of hours on sexual abuse charges, including sexual abuse involving minors. Matt Finn outside the courtroom right now with more big question. Does R. Kelly get bond, and does he have the money for it?
Well, the Cook County State's Attorney's indictment has asked that R. Kelly not be released on bond today. So one of the big questions heading into this hearing is whether the judge will issue bond and if R. Kelly's team will have enough cash on hand to bail him out. Celebrity attorney Michael Avenatti claims that he is representing one of the underage girls in this indictment. He just entered the courthouse. R. Kelly turned himself into police last night on 10 counts of aggravated criminal sexual abuse. The indictment against R. Kelly goes into graphic detail about the sexual abuse alleged by 4 women, 3 of which who were underage at the time. And Michael Avenatti claims that he has submitted a tape to the prosecutors which depicts R. Kelly involved in a sexual act with a 14-year-old girl. Here is R. Kelly's attorney responding to that allegation.
No one's shown us the tape. No one called up and said, would you like to see it? No one said, can you verify? No one said anything. They're walking around. They say a tape exists.
I got you.
R. Kelly was recently thrust back into the spotlight by a Lifetime documentary that profiles many underage girls who allege sexual abuse. Here is one woman who claims R. Kelly coerced her into sexual assault.
I was young and I was starstruck. However, now that I'm an adult, I feel hurt by what he did to me. When I was only 16 years old and under the influence of alcohol and marijuana, which was provided to me at this after party.
Bond court is now set to begin at any moment. If convicted, R. Kelly faces up to 3 to 7 years for each of the 10 counts against him. Leland.
Wow. A lot going on there. Matt Finn, back to you as news warrants. And if you track down Avenatti and get to ask him any questions about this supposed tape, let us know.
You got it.
All right, Jillian.
Coming up, 2020 Democratic candidates are hitting the trail, including California Senator Kamala Harris in Iowa. Our Democrat political panel will break down how each candidate is trying to grab the headlines. Plus, Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar getting attention for all the wrong reasons, all over a comb and a salad. We'll break that down for you as well. Also, this ISIS bride wants to take a break from terrorism and return to America. We'll tell you what's being done to keep her out.
This is a woman who inflicted enormous risk on American soldiers, on American citizens. She's a terrorist. She's not coming.
Welcome back. A North Carolina judge striking down a voter ID law that voters approved in November. Judge Brian Collins said that the constitutional amendment requiring North Carolina voters to have photo identification to vote in person didn't work. The law would also limit the state income tax rate. Republicans leader in the state are vowing to repeal and seek to delay the ruling. Let you know what happens there. North Carolina is certainly in play come 2020. In 2020, hopeful Kamala Harris on the road today. California senator in Iowa, where she held a discussion with the Asian and Latino Coalition in Des Moines. She isn't the only Democratic contender making the rounds this weekend. Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, north of her home state in New Hampshire this afternoon. She's going to be holding an organizing event at Plymouth State University. Sherrod Brown testing the waters in Nevada with a meet and greet in Las Vegas and a fundraiser in Henderson. The Ohio senator has yet to officially announce a bid for the presidency, but says a decision will likely come in March. One of the issues we have already seen come up on the trail for each of these Democratic hopefuls is what to do about recreational marijuana. Legal in some states, illegal federally. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker, Hawaii Congresswoman Tulsi Gabbard, New York Senator Kirsten Gillibrand, Vermont Senator Bernie Sanders, Massachusetts Senator Elizabeth Warren, and Kamala Harris of California have all supported recreational marijuana, with Harris talking about it, shall we say, quite candidly on The Breakfast Club.
They say you oppose legalizing weed.
That's not true.
I know.
and look, I joke about it, half joking. Half my family's from Jamaica. Are you kidding me?
Her father had something to say about that, but we'll leave that there. We'll bring in Al Motter, Democratic strategist and partner at Brownstein, Hyatt, Faber, and Schreck. Did I get that right?
Almost. Faber and Schreck.
Okay, well, there you go. You got your plug in. And Jessica Deloche, Democratic strategist and New Deal political director. Nice to see both of you as well. Is there a risk, and a continuing risk, Al, for Democrats continuing to be pushed farther and farther to the left, that now President Trump can say you're the party of late-term abortion, socialism, and legalized pot?
Well, I think there's a risk in Dems being pushed to the left on some issues, but I don't think this is one of them. One of the biggest things we need to do in the 2020 election is get young people to vote. Young people are very animated on this issue. Recreational marijuana is something that's positive for them, and if we can get more young Americans voting in the polls, they're likely to be voting Democratic.
Yeah, young people, is that worth the trade-off, though, for suburban moms who don't want their 16-year-olds being able to get their hands on pot?
Well, one of the smartest things that either of these two major parties could do would be to figure out how you tap into a young voter base. Those people are the future. And medical marijuana, recreational use of marijuana, that is not a lightning rod like the way Republicans would like for it to be. It's a states' rights issue, and if the Republican Party wants to start pushing back on states' rights, then they're more than welcome to do so. But that will not be popular long term. It won't even be popular now.
Does it play well for somebody like a Hickenlooper out of Colorado who may be more moderate but was able to manage that push towards recreational pot?
I think it does. And you look, Jessica mentioned states' rights. I mean, Cory Gardner, a Republican running for re-election in that state of Colorado, has been very vocal in pushing the Department of Justice to stay away from what's going on in Colorado.
He was holding up Justice Department nominees over the whole thing.
Precisely.
Yeah. All right, Jessica, to you on this, though. What is too far in terms of Democrats pushing either for criminal justice reform or for legalization of marijuana?
Well, I think right now, too far isn't even in the realm of possibility. What we need to have are very honest conversations about these topics that you just mentioned. So, when President Trump was running for president, he even said that when it came to the legalization of marijuana, that he believed it was a states' rights issue. So many of these conversations will come down to what occurs on a state level, within state legislative bodies. And there's a great conversation to be had among these presidential hopefuls, and my hope is that they will be having that conversation in a way that's meaningful to voters, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. And I think that the Democrats are well positioned to do so. Donald Trump is not, and Donald Trump will be the nominee. He has to defend all of his failures right now. Democrats, it's
now we're getting into a whole different realm. We'll bring it back to somebody, Al, who I know you're a big fan of, which Amy Klobuchar of the great state of Minnesota. She did her announcement, she sort of passed herself off as Minnesota nice. That's part of her charm and appeal, she says. At the same time, you had these huge opposition research dumps about how she was so terrible to her staff that she ate a salad with a comb because her staff didn't bring her a fork, and then made her staff clean the comb. Anything to this, you think?
I think you got a slight sprinkling of facts and a healthy dose of exaggeration here, Leland. I mean, look, she also said in her announcement that she's full of grit, that she's tough. And what this country needs is someone with grit and toughness to lead us out of these problems that we face. And here's the thing about Amy. I've known her for 13 years. She has a lot of folks who love her, stay with her, support her. I went to a going-away party.
She got high turnover at her Senate staff.
I went to a going-away party for one of her chiefs of staff that she threw out of her own budget with over 100 people at it. So I've seen her be very kind to her staff. So the notion that the fact that she's tough and has high standards, as she herself says, maybe that's what America needs right now, somebody with high standards to lead us.
Jessica, it brings up an important point, though, that Amy Klobuchar is one of, shall we say, the more centrist candidates. Is the fact that there is such organized opposition research going on about her and such an organized opposition dump mean that the more progressive wing views her as a threat?
Well, nobody really knows exactly where these attacks are coming from, but I do think that people take her candidacy seriously. They do think that she's a formidable opponent. She could very well secure the nomination. As we've said in previous conversations, it's too soon to know, but I definitely think that people are rightfully scared of her.
All right, we'll leave it there. Jessica, Al, good to see you both. Great discussion. We'll watch everybody on the trail this weekend. And then this. Those look like fireworks going off as a city bus burns. Violent clashes continuing on the Venezuela-Colombian border over humanitarian aid delivery. President Trump tweeting about this. We're going to talk to a former U.S. diplomat about what options exist for the United States. And Pope Francis vowing justice for abuse victims. We're going to bring you more on exactly what we're learning out of this sex abuse prevention summit at the Vatican.
Tensions running high at the Venezuelan border as a humanitarian aid delivery attempts to make its way into the country against the wishes of contested President Maduro. Joining us now with more insight, former White House Director of Global Engagement for the Obama administration, Brett Bruen. Brett, it's great to have you here. I know that you served a tour for state in Venezuela, so you know this issue inside out. Based on the signs you're seeing today, live pictures on the ground, which way do you think this is going to go?
This is a decisive moment for Venezuela, and what you're seeing is the people are taking matters in their own hands. You can talk about Guaido, you can talk about Maduro, but ultimately this is going to be decided by the actions of the people in the streets.
Are you, I mean, it's a tough question to ask, I mean, looking at these pictures of riots and fire and violence, but is this like encouraging to you in that sense?
It is. I have to say there are echoes of Tiananmen Square, of people standing up to armed soldiers, facing down military equipment and barriers with nothing other than their hands empty and outreaching for peace, for a better future for the children.
You know, this is a country that's sort of poised on the brink of an outright civil war, mass-scale humanitarian disaster unfolding with people facing starvation. It seems like a bad story out of like a past century. You know, it's hard for Americans to see this and get our minds around the idea that this is actually going on not that far from here.
Exactly, and I think that's what is different about Venezuela. We've seen this play out in Syria, we've seen it certainly play out in Africa, but here in our own hemisphere, just a couple hours from our border, I mean, this is remarkable that it has gotten to this point. Let's bear in mind, it didn't happen overnight. It was decades of decay and destruction of institutions and economy, and it's now all coming to a head.
I talked to National Security Advisor John Bolton a few days ago. He said that by the White House's estimate, 80 to 90% of the military has already turned on Maduro and thrown their support behind the opposition leader Juan Guaido. But he said it's the top 10%, the top tier of the military brass that's remaining loyal to Maduro. Can you break down for us why?
Because they are receiving the spoils, not just of corruption in the government, but there are narco-trafficking networks that run through Caracas, and these generals are the ones who are profiting off of that illegal trafficking in drugs, in arms, and a whole host of other things. Let's bear in mind that there is also very strong presence of Hezbollah, of Iranian influence in the country, and all of that comes with money, and that has for the last several years been filling the pockets of these generals.
So what can be done to try and turn their loyalties, that top 10% of military brass, to the opposition? Or is there nothing that can be done? We just have to live with that?
I think what you're seeing play out on the border with Colombia, where soldiers are literally crossing over to the opposition side, is going to start to crumble this ironclad grip that Maduro has had on the country. And as people see those soldiers abandoning their post, it will give hope to the population, but also hope to military officers who perhaps have lost faith in Maduro.
What is Maduro's rationale? I mean, we hear these horrific stories about dictators like Maduro, South Sudan, all over the world, denying aid, not allowing aid from other countries, food, medical supplies, medicine, to get to their own people. Why is that a winning strategy for anybody?
Because if you let the aid in, you acknowledge there's a problem. You acknowledge that your management of the country for the last 20 years has led us to this point. And that, I think, is a very difficult prospect for Maduro, who has projected this image of strength and of standing up to the West. So if he lets the aid in, he acknowledges that there are hundreds of thousands of malnourished children. There are people that are literally dying of preventable diseases. That's a problem that he's unwilling to confront.
Kind of hard to deny when we've got the footage to prove it. But thank you so much for joining us today. Great to hear your perspective, and we'll check back with you soon.
That's good.
Stunning developments out of the Vatican as a cardinal claims officials destroyed documents in the church's sex abuse scandal. A top German cardinal and prominent nun are blasting the Catholic Church's culture of silence during a 4-day sex abuse prevention summit at the Vatican. Lauren Green is live from Rome. Lauren?
Well, on this last day of the summit, bishops are focusing on the issue of transparency and facing really the ugly truth that much of the clerical abuse happened because church leaders simply looked the other way. Abuse victims marched through Rome's Piazza del Popolo, or People Plaza, today as part of their ongoing presence here for the summit. Scores of victims from at least 20 countries have come to put pressure on the bishops, including a delegation from Pennsylvania, the state where its grand jury report of clergy sex abuse last summer sparked the crisis.
So our journey here has just been to bring awareness to what really is going on. They say they want to help victims, but ultimately they're not.
Today, bishops got also a bit of a tongue lashing from a nun, no less, as only nuns can really do. Nigerian sister Veronica Openibo, one of the few women to speak at the conference, and she basically called the bishops out as being like the Pharisees and the Sadducees that Jesus condemned.
We proclaim the 10 Commandments and parade ourselves as being the custodians of moral standards and values and good behavior in the society. Hypocrites at times, yes, but why did we keep silent for so long?
Now, I want to give the bishops a little bit of credit because they are hearing the message. They are aware of the victims here and the responsibilities to them. They have been meeting with them, hearing their stories of abuse, and it has made a difference. Even though there will be no final document here after this summit, the bishops are asking for some kind of guidelines to take back with them. So they are going to be making a handbook to give them something concrete to do that with. And while the conference will officially end tomorrow with the Pope's final words, they all know that really it is just the beginning of creating any kind of real change in the church. Back to you.
Just the beginning, and I suppose a handbook is better than nothing at all. Lauren Green, thanks so much.
An out-of-control tanker fire in Ohio. What caused the massive fireball? And who got out alive? Plus, the Trump administration vowing to keep the American-born ISIS bride out of the United States. We're going to talk to a former top DHS immigration lawyer about whether we should call her an ISIS bride at all, or maybe a terrorist. And a Fox News alert in the case against Paul Manafort. The judge in that case, Amy Berman Jackson, has granted special counsel Robert Mueller's motion to file a sentencing memo for Paul Manafort under seal. Remember, that memo was due late last night. The judge has also ordered Mueller's office to file a redacted version of the memo and exhibits on the public docket. We were waiting last night and today for this. No word yet, though, on when the redacted version will be made available. Obviously, we got a team watching it, and we'll go through it as it happens.
You're looking at a live dash cam video that caught moments before a fuel tanker burst into flames. Witnesses say the tanker carrying 8,000 gallons of oil rolled over, hit another car, and then exploded. 2 people were injured and brought to the hospital immediately.
Wow. The father of the American-born ISIS bride who joined the Islamic State in Syria is suing the Trump administration. This happened yesterday over her citizenship and seeking her return to the United States with her 18-month-old child. The Trump administration, as we reported, is vowing to keep her out of the country. Secretary Pompeo spoke to that exact point. Daniel Brown served with the Department of Homeland Security during the Bush administration and managed cases just like this for the government. There's 2 issues here. There's the legal question as is she a U.S. citizen? Then there's the larger question about what to do with people like this. Everyone's calling her an ISIS bride. Jillian Turner made the very good point. This isn't someone who was kidnapped and then married off. This is someone who voluntarily, as an adult, went to Syria to join up with a group that was fighting against the United States and actively promoting the killing of U.S. citizens. Should we call her an ISIS bride, or should we just call her another terrorist?
That's a good question. I'm not here to defend her or any of the acts that she has taken in her life or the choices she's made. I think there's probably a good case to make that she may be prosecutable as a terrorist.
Well, it seems like her attorney's at least even saying, hey, it's okay if she comes over and is prosecuted anyway. He just wants her to be able to come home. There's this issue about, is she a U.S. citizen or not? Because she was born on U.S. soil. That's undisputed. But at the same time, she was the daughter of a diplomat from Yemen, may have been not a diplomat at the time. That's in question. Is this a winnable case for the attorney?
Potentially, yes. There seems to be they appear to have some evidence that he was not a diplomat or was not serving as a diplomat at the time that she was born. There was enough evidence, at least, for them to present originally to the Department of State a long time ago that caused the Department of State to grant her a passport and then renew that passport before she left for Syria.
All right, so this is her attorney on that point.
If Barack Obama, his State Department, didn't want her back in this country, they wouldn't strip her of that passport and visa, right?
President Trump declaring her a non-citizen, not only is he overreaching his own authority, but essentially he's giving her a free pass. He's saying the U.S. has no jurisdiction over her and letting her go.
This is an important point. Is there a way to strip someone of their U.S. citizenship, or say, even if you had it, you don't have it anymore, once you join up with a foreign terrorist group?
Under our current law, no. The Constitution guarantees if you're a citizen, you remain a citizen, and it can't be taken away. However, you can give it up voluntarily. And there are certain acts that the immigration statute recognizes as potentially expatriating, meaning you lose your, taking away your citizenship if you commit them voluntarily and with the intent to give up your citizenship in doing so. None of those acts probably fit her case in the statute.
Fascinating.
The statute talks about, for example, if you serve in the armed forces of a foreign state, but ISIS isn't a foreign state under the statute.
Fascinating. All right, well, that was her interview on ABC as she talked about some of her tweets that called for attacks on U.S. citizens. Now it's up to the courts to decide how this goes. Meanwhile, she's still overseas. Appreciate your time and your service, sir. Good to see you.
Thanks very much.
Thank you. Jillian?
Well, not everything that happens in Vegas stays there. Freak winter weather blanketing Sin City this week. We'll tell you where it's heading next.
At the Better Sleep Shop in Morris Home and Ashley Home Store.
Well, it was Sin City or it is White City. A freak winter storm surprising Las Vegas. This video, Scottsdale, Arizona on the right, on the left, not normally associated with snow. Denver on the left. The winter weather swept through the Arizona desert as well as New Mexico, parts of Colorado. Road closures, school and government offices closed all across the Southwest.
So is more snow headed their way? Meteorologist Adam Klotz is live in the Fox Extreme Weather Center. Adam, tell us about it.
Well, Jillian, that winter system that you were just talking about now moving into the middle of the country, and it's going to bring a lot of different weather, actually tornadoes across the south, a blizzard to portions of the Plain States. So this is a big, large, major system. We're going to be talking about some spring-like weather, across the southeast. From Memphis stretching down across Tennessee, these are all areas where there's a moderate risk and even in some areas probably a likely risk of seeing some tornadic activity late this afternoon into the overnight hours. And then it's a much larger area if you talk about around that general system where we're seeing a huge area where you could see flooding from this. So from Mississippi, Alabama, North Georgia, stretching up across Tennessee into Kentucky, getting the Ohio River Basin, and then it's stretching farther off towards the east. All areas where this is going to bring flooding. On the backside of this system, where the air is a little bit colder, we're talking about blizzards. That means the visibility is going to be down to a quarter mile for 3 hours. Winds up to 35 miles an hour. Just a ton of snow with this system. Guys, this is going to be a major winter system. And again, this happens tonight, running into early tomorrow before it works its way to the East Coast. Won't be as bad for folks in the East, though.
So it is not staying in Vegas, as all things that happen there are.
It started there, didn't end there.
Thanks, Adam.
All right. Well, some new breaking news from John Bolton out of Venezuela. We're hearing from those soldiers who defected over to Juan Guaido's side. The team in New York has